please notify the chair of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. If anyone is recording this meeting, I request that you identify yourself at this time. Hearing none? Okay, so first item on the agenda are comments from the public regarding items not on the agenda. Hearing none, then I want to jump to something that we do every year in our first meeting, where we welcome our new members. And what we do is we go around and just quickly introduce ourselves to the new advisory committee members and just say a quick couple sentences about yourself. So we'll do that first, and then we're going to adjourn for the 7:30 joint meeting. So I'm going to go in order of seniority because why not? So Dave, you're on the spot. You're the longest serving member. You get to go first.
Is that really true?
You are.
That's what happens in year 7.
Yes, and alphabetical. I'll just consider it alphabetical. That makes me feel better. Hi, everybody. Dave Anderson. Welcome to the advisory committee. I am, as Julie just pointed out, serving my 7th year on the advisory committee. And in all fairness, it's really been fun. I'm still here 7 years in. So welcome aboard. I've lived in Hingham for about 13 years now, but I married a woman who grew up in Hingham. So it feels like I've been here forever.
All right. Thanks, Dave. I had Bob Curley next, but I don't see Bob. Maybe he's late getting back from the golf course. We'll go next to George.
All right, everybody. Hello, George Danis. This is my 5th year on the advisory committee, and it's been a great and a very quick 5 years. And I have to say that I've enjoyed it tremendously. I've been in town about 32, 33 years, and prior to AdCom, I was on the audit committee. So.
All right. Thanks, George. Next we have, let's see. Well, now I'm going to get all technical and get myself messed up. But anyway, I'll just go back into another list. Nancy Mcdonald.
Hi, I'm Nancy Mcdonald. This is my 4th year on advisory. And prior to this, I was on the fire station building committee, the original fire station building committee. And we've been in town for about 22 years and have 3 kids that went through the Hingham Public Schools. And AdCom has been the highlight of my 22 years.
Okay, thanks, Nancy.
That was sincere.
Oh no, I'm saying thanks because Evan's getting grouchy because I got myself mixed up. And so yes, Evan is more senior to Nancy. I just want to let everybody know Evan is more senior. So why don't we go next to Evan?
I said more senior, but less responsible, which is in fact truthful. So I'm Evan. I've been on AdCom for 5 years, along with George. I think George and I started together. I've really enjoyed the work and some of the folks that I've got to meet along the way. And it's, a great way to understand kind of how the mechanics of town government work. So welcome to all you new faces.
All right, thank you, Evan. And next we have Andy Mcelhaney.
Andy, unmute yourself.
But you're on mute, Andy, and I don't have the mug.
Oh, we need a mug for you, Julie.
Need a mug.
Andy's out of practice.
Yeah.
Welcome to Matt and Sarah and Caitlin. I'm Andy Mcelhaney. I am starting my 3rd year on AdCom. I have served on various ad hoc committees and on the personnel board for 9 years. I am a retired lawyer. I've lived in Hingham since 1977. and live on Myers Farm Road, where my former neighbor was at Goulet.
All right, next, Daveline Cooper.
Daveline Cooper, this is starting my 4th year on AdCom, which is sort of stunning to me. It's hard to believe how quickly 3 years have gone by. Although in the midst of them, some years it's not felt like it was fast, but then if I look back over it, it really has been. I was on the Housing Authority for a while here in Hingham, and I'm a retired law professor starting my third year of retirement. I've now been retired 2 years. And I must say it's wonderful not going back to school. So yet again, so that's good. And I live at Hingham Woods in Hingham with my rescue cat, Allie, who many have heard about the adventures of Allie. And life is good. I moved to Hingham in 1990 from the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So good to be with you.
All right, next we'll go with Brenda.
Hi, Brenda Black. I think actually I'm the newest of last year's group because I was appointed towards the end of September to replace someone who had to leave. So I feel like I'm still quite new, but it is the beginning of my 2nd year. We've been in town now about 20 years. My son went through the Hingham school system, and my involvement with the town involved lots of work in the schools with the assorted green committees, and then eventually with the long range waste planning and recycling committee, which has become Cleaner Greener Hingham. And now serving on AdCom. I'm a psychologist with a private practice, small business here in town, based out of my home at this point. So welcome to the new folks.
All right, thanks, Brenda. Kristen?
Hi, Kristen Degowski. This is my 2nd year on AdCom. So any of the new people starting, feel free to reach out with any type of questions because I feel like I had a million last year. I've lived in Hingham for 7 years, and I am a tax director at Harvard Management Company.
All right, thanks, Kristen. Al?
Hello, welcome everybody. Alan Mcdonald. This is also my 2nd year. I'm out of practice too. I guess my nighttime Zooming. I got to work on my lighting. Don't mean to be this dark. Welcome everyone. I've been in Hingham about 19 years, previously served on the school space master planning committee and the school building committee. And this has been great. Welcome.
All right, Tina?
Hi, I'm Tina Sherwood. I was doing the math and we've been in Hingham for 27 years, which I find really hard to believe. It's my 2nd year on AdCom. I was on the fire station building committee for the central fire station, the board of trustees for the library, and assorted other PTOs. I have 2 kids that have gone through the Hingham schools, and I'm really excited to meet the new people.
All right, thanks, Tina. Bob, we're going to go back to you. You're one of the most senior, but we missed you at the beginning. So you want to introduce yourself?
Couldn't you think of a different term other than most senior?
Oh, gosh. All right. Most
elderly?
Oh, no. It's only,
Wow, I didn't even say that.
One of the most experienced.
It's only getting worse. So let me jump in. I'm Bob Curley. Sorry, I was a few minutes late. I was actually downstairs in my new office, affectionately known as the Cave, printing out the latest iteration of the changes to the town financial policy. And then I joined the selectmen's meeting instead of this one. So here I am at last, the former chair of this august body. So happy to be back and serving under Julie's leadership. Looking forward to an exceptional year. I'm originally from Dorchester, which gives me the designation of OFD, but we have now been in Hingham for 45 years. I have 2 daughters that live here now and 5 grandchildren. I think it is Brigadoon, a place that is rare and exceptional and that rises from the mists. I have previously served as chair of Historical Commission in the CPC. I have already had the great pleasure of working with Caitlin for over 2 hours last night on the financial policy. So delighted to see Caitlin again tonight and delighted to meet our other new members. I wish you lots of enthusiasm and every success on the EdCom. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Bob. And I'll finish up of the that I'm Julie Straley. I'm chair this year, and I learned from Bob last year, but Bob's hanging around another year, which I'm lucky to have Bob. And let's see, I am in my 6th and final year on the advisory committee. And before that, I served not on a town committee, but for the League of Women Voters for many years, the PTOs of East and Plymouth River Schools, and the vestry at my church, St. John's. And I've enjoyed my time so far on the advisory committee. My husband, Andy, and I have been in Hingham for 23 years. So we're newcomers compared to Bob. We raised our 2 kids in Hingham. I went through the Hingham Public Schools. They're both in college now. So I've been an empty nester for 3 weeks. And so that's interesting. And anyway, I look forward to working with all of you this year, and hopefully, knock on wood, it'll be a normal year. And so next, I want to jump into our new members to introduce themselves quickly. So I'll go in alphabetical order, starting with Matt Goulet.
Hi, everyone. Matt Goulet. I live in Conservatory Park with my wife and 3 young children after moving back to the area following 5+ years in Colorado and California. As Andy or Mr. Mcelhaney, as I like to call him, pointed out, I grew up in Myers Farm. I currently work at Fidelity Investments, and in the past have served on capital outlay, development industrial, and long range waste and recycling. Didn't know about the name change to Cleaner Greener Hingham, but that's my past kind of experience with the town. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Caitlin?
Good evening, everybody. Caitlin Kirk. I've been in Hingham since 2012. I have 3 small kids, 8, 6, and 4. They're currently at East. And I work at Vertex Pharmaceuticals and in patient services now, but held longstanding roles in finance within the organization for about 13 years. I recently went part-time in a role to spend more time with my boys and to get involved in the community. So this is the first volunteer opportunity that I have done in Hingham, and I'm looking forward to working with you all and learning more about how this town works.
All right, thanks, Caitlin. And then finally, we have Sarah Amelia.
Hi, how are you? I'm Sarah Amelia. I have, I previously served on the Recreation Commission in Hingham for 5 years, which then I think I've been off that maybe 3 years. And I was recently serving on, I'm serving on Hingham Sports Partnership and a naming bylaw committee. I have lived in Hingham since 1979. So Andy and Bob have me beat, but I was raised here by my parents. My husband claims to be a 7th generation Hinghamite. And he has the family history to prove it, I guess. So I went through the Hingham Public Schools from 1st grade, graduated Hingham High, and my 3 kids I have 2 at the middle school right now, and I have 1 at Foster. That's me. Oh, and I'm a lawyer. I worked at a law firm in Hingham for 14 years, actually, and just moved to a law firm in Boston in April.
All right. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say sometimes, but I'm glad you're an attorney. I'm glad you're in our group, but the lawyer jokes sometimes pop up on this committee, so. Anyway, we're gonna jump ahead and try to get another agenda item done because we're not quite ready for our 7:30 joint meeting. So George and Nancy, can we jump to approving the minutes?
We can. I think Alan has his hand up. Maybe a mistake.
Oh, I have to learn how to do this kind of stuff. Okay. Go ahead, Al.
It was being official, although it's a very small point. I figured there was one small clarification as I was reading the names going around that might be worth clarifying, is that while I am an admirer of Nancy Mcdonald, not a relative.
Yes.
And even though we both have triplet children, we don't have them together.
We live parallel lives.
Yes.
On the side of one another.
Well, your kids are 1 year apart, or we're 1 year apart in the school system. So that was very helpful of you guys to stretch that out.
Same Plymouth River School District.
That's right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Al. Sorry I didn't catch your hand before. All right, so minutes. Do you guys want to do that now?
George, you want to do the 29th?
Sure. So a blast from the past.
Wait, George, are you getting paid for this?
This is for my last paycheck, Dave. Come on now.
Just checking, that's right. That's right. You're paid in advance.
Sue won't pay me until these get posted. And so, but anyway, for those of you who are in attendance on June 29th, I have minutes. And those minutes have been circulated. I've gotten some comments back. And so the latest version that Nancy sent out to you is the red line version with all of those comments. So are there any additional comments that somebody would like to make at this point? Hearing none, can we have a motion?
Move to approve the minutes of June 29th and the red line version circulated to everyone.
Second.
All in favor? I'm going to do a roll call vote. Sorry. Who were we missing besides the new members? I think we were missing Evan that night.
The 29th?
Nancy and Evan.
Nancy and Evan. Okay. All right. So Bob Curley,
Aye.
George.
Aye.
No, Nancy. Dave.
Aye.
Andy.
Aye.
Daveline.
Aye.
Brenda.
Aye.
Kristen.
Aye.
Al.
Aye.
Tina.
I was in attendance at that meeting, but I'm not in the list of attendees, FYI. Aye.
Oh, that's a change.
Very minor.
Amend the motion.
All right. Do I run through everybody again?
No.
Okay. All right. As
Stop
amended.
the crazy. Stop the crazy. Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. George, you're done. You're finally done with being secretary.
Yay,
All right.
George.
Tina,
job.
sorry I
George.
missed you. I will add you in. All right, that applause is all the pay that I need. So Sue,
Oh, yeah.
you need to send me that final check.
That's nice. Okay, and then we did have our brief meeting at the beginning of August. Nancy's hands, she got some calluses from writing out the minutes for that
It was
meeting.
stressful.
But does anyone have, well, go ahead, Nancy.
Yes, does anyone have any comments or suggestions for the meeting minutes of August 10th?
I think it was the 3rd. Was it the 3rd?
Oh, don't you tell me that that's. Mhm. Mhm. It was the 3rd. You're correct. All
So
right.
no one has any extra edits for Nancy? Okay, can I get a motion to accept the minutes from August 3rd?
Move to approve the minutes of August 3rd.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Let's see, I don't know if we were missing anyone that night, but Bob,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Evan?
Aye.
Andy?
I was actually exiled to the Tree Preservation Study Committee meeting, so I was not present.
Okay. Daveline?
Aye.
Brenda?
Tree preservation meeting, wasn't there?
Got it. Kristen?
Aye.
Al?
I don't think I, was I there? I don't think I was.
In the minutes, no.
Yeah, I don't think you were there that night.
Okay.
Al. Tina?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Caitlin?
Oh,
Not present.
we're,
We had new members then.
It was,
okay.
that was the school committee thing, the combo night, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it was when we were talking about, well, the Plymouth River Windows night.
I don't think I wasn't there.
Okay. And Sarah?
Aye.
Okay. All right, great. Well, it's 7:23, so I would like to move to put the meeting in recess. Bob, you're the attorney, but I did check that Robert's rule says that if you are going to put your meeting into recess, that needs to be a vote. Does that sound? I don't think, but we didn't do that last year. So I was going to try to be dotting i's and crossing t's. So can I have a motion to put our meeting into recess?
So
I
moved.
move to put the meeting into recess.
Second.
All right, Bob,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye.
Ben, oh, Dave, sorry, Dave.
Aye.
Evan,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Daveline,
Aye.
Brenda,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Al,
Aye.
Tina,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Caitlin,
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
The recess is ended and the advisory committee will come to order. And next on our agenda, we have a reserve fund transfer request. We have Linda Harper, the director of the library, here to explain the request. So Linda, if you want to take it away.
Thank you, Julie, and nice to see everyone again. It's been a while since I've seen you all, so, and some of you are new, so nice to meet you. Those who I haven't, nice to see you all again. So quickly, you probably, for those of you who have been on this committee before, you've seen me before asking about funds for the library floor. So just a quick recap, the library floor is over 20 years old now. It was installed when they had the last renovation of the library. The floor I'm talking about, so when you come into the library, it's the main library floor that's tiled. And then if you go up the stairs that are straight ahead of you when you go into the main floor, it's what we call the cafe area. So it's that second floor that overlooks the courtyard area. So in those two areas, we have very old and failing tiles. They're cracking, they're bubbling. Some of them won't stick anymore. So it's been a while and time to replace the library floor. So we've had this request for a number of years. We had funds encumbered because we thought we might be doing some other work on the library. But at this point, we are not. We need to replace that floor to have a safe and aesthetically pleasing place for people to walk into. So we had $184,000 total to complete this project. $94,000 of that had been encumbered funds from quite a few years ago. $90,000 was a recent request, so we had $184,000 to do this project. Kathy Riley, the new procurement officer, bid out the project for us, and the lowest total price that came in for the bid was $202,708. That included a base bid of $188,952 with an additional add alternative of $13,756. The adult was for an anti-fracture membrane. So when we had the vendors come in to do a walkthrough, they had suggested, because of the cracking and bubbling that had gone on with the floor that we had suggested originally in the bid that they put the membrane over the areas that caused the crack. And they said, you probably should do the entire floor. You don't have to. So we asked J.R. Frey, the new town engineer, and he checked into it with some flooring experts and said, it would extend the life of the floor if you put it down. So he recommends it. So if we include the adult into the base bid, and JR also recommended carrying a 20% contingency on top of that, chances are we wouldn't need it, but if we did, then you wouldn't have to go back and ask for more. Tom Mayo agrees and recommends that we have the 20% on top of that. That leaves us about $59,000 short of the overage plus the 20% contingency. So the request I have in front of you today is for a reserve fund transfer of $59,250. That would enable us to get the library floor tiles in the main area when you walk in, as well as the second floor replaced. That's the long and short of it. Do I have any questions?
First, I want to ask a quick question about the select board meeting, and I'm assuming they voted on it earlier this evening.
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking. Yes. So they did vote on it, unanimous to approve.
Okay.
And they also, in front of them, besides the reserve fund transfer, was the contract. So they also voted to approve the contract.
And just to let everybody know, the contingency is just in case they find something when they take the tiles up. If it's not needed, it will either fall to fund balance, or what we can do is put it back into the reserve fund if at the end of the year we need that.
Okay. Thank you, Sue. So I see that, Bob, you have a question, but you got to unmute yourself, Bob.
He's on mute.
Okay, I need my mug. Sue just answered my last question. My first question was there originally a contingency in the budget? And my second question is, I think we've all seen enormous rises in material costs and construction costs because of COVID. Is that what's driving this?
So Bob, to answer your question in the two parts. First, in the original, we did carry about it was between 18 and 19% contingency. So we did have that built into the original budget of the 188,000. The prices do seem to have gone up. I'm not sure if that is what is driving the price, but I did notice the lowest bid was Capital Carpet, and they had actually sent me an email just late this afternoon with information on the project. And I did notice they had a little disclaimer. They said materials were hard to get, and they were finding they were having trouble with getting them distribution, because we had put in a kind of a deadline. We wanted to have the project completed by January if we could. That was our goal. Understanding that, sometimes things come up, but they had already put in kind of a disclaimer, and I think this is probably general, that they are having trouble getting materials in, and there may be a delay because of that. Sorry for the inconvenience. There's nothing they can do. So I suspect the answer is yes, but I would have to ask them for sure to know. But both bids came in overpriced, so I'm assuming it's a materials and or labor shortage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Daveline.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and Matt may have a comment on this too. When Capital Outlay has looked at this the last couple of years, it's always been thought that these numbers might not be quite what the project would actually cost, because it's hard to have a firm amount of funds that you're requesting with a vendor who's going to do the work. So it's always an estimate in that sense. And so I'm not surprised by that. But I think in terms of thinking from the capital outlay perspective, this is really a safety issue if you have tiles that are failing in a public place where people are walking. And so I think I certainly support this.
Thank you.
George?
Yeah, so Bob hit my first question and Daveline hit part of my second question. So I guess I need a little bit more information as to why the project is being done right now and why it hasn't been done maybe a little bit earlier, if it's really a critical safety issue.
That is an excellent question. And yes, it is a critical safety issue. We've actually covered the worst parts with mats. We've taken clear tape and tried to tape down the other spots. There's bubbling and cracking that's going on that are a trip hazard. The reason it hasn't been done, and as Sue can talk, that 94,000 that was encumbered was probably from back in Dennis Corcoran's time. It was probably the previous director's request, because we had applied for a mass construction grant to redo major portion of the library. And it was felt until we went through the process, were awarded and decided as a town, if we were moving forward with that, it would be foolish to put in an expensive floor and then rip it up a year or two later. And so the process was that we were awarded the grant. We were, for a number of reasons, were not able to pursue the grant. So we had to decline that award. And so here we are needing to do some of the projects that now need to get done.
Okay, so last year you went before Capital and you asked for $90,000. And now, a couple of months into the new year, you're coming before us and you're asking for an additional $60,000.
Correct, because
over 60% more than you asked for just a few months ago.
That's correct, because the 90,000 was only part of the difference. That 94,000, there are two pools of money, right? So there's the 94,000 that Dennis had put on, that the previous director, Dennis Corcoran, had put on because this floor needed to be replaced for a while now. And that was carried over as an encumbrance until we found out what was happening with the grant. When it became apparent that we were not able to move forward with the construction grant, we re-estimated the project, which now years had passed. So we got new estimates, the costs had gone up. So the $90,000 was to be added to the 94,000. So I had $184,000 to complete the project, which was the cost, the estimated cost plus about an 18% contingency. And when we put it out,
that's not my question though. I mean, my question is, why were you coming to Capital last year for $90,000 and now you're asking for an additional 59?
Right.
What's the difference? I mean, I guess, why was the 90 instead of 125 or 130? It just seems like a big difference in a very short period of time.
Because we had $184,000 to complete the project. And when the project was bid out, the lowest bid that came in was at $202,000.
Okay. And I guess my final comment would be this, and Sue, maybe you can help me if I'm off on this one, but it seems like a large reserve fund transfer request. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't table this and send the project back to Capital for the additional money.
Was that question for Sue or for me? To Sue?
Yeah, I don't know what the question is.
So is the in my experience on AdCom, outside of a legal or a snow, $59,000 seems like a large reserve fund transfer request. And tell me if I'm wrong on that. Maybe I'm just misunderstanding. And if I'm correct, then I'm wondering why we don't table this request from Linda and ask her to go back to Capital and seek another capital approval for
Well, then that wouldn't be until FY23.
Yeah.
I understand.
Can I add at the select board meeting, a similar question was asked to Tom Mayo and to Michelle Monsegur. And Michelle had replied that this actually was a small request. They said they had $700,000. You could probably confirm that, currently available in that fund. And she said, this basically, Tom actually at this point had said, that's just as a contingency. Chances are, unless they find something really wrong, that money would get turned back, in which case could either go back into reserve fund or into fund balance, depending on, or fund balance, and then if need to, back into reserve fund if they had requests. But he said that that was not gonna be a problem with the amount. He actually felt that was a small amount compared to the total that was in there. So he had a similar question, and that was the response that he gave.
I'm all set, Julie.
Okay, thanks, George. Does anyone from Capital Outlay want to lay in, or should I just leave that one alone?
Well, I think there is a safety issue. And the thing I'm remembering is, of course, the first year I was on AdCom was when the library was awarded a grant that the town, and anyway, there was a decision not to go forward with that, which made, I think then these projects came from that. I think sending it to Capital now would just delay it. And because one of the main concerns of Capital is a safety issue, and this is clearly a safety issue. If you're taping down parts of the floor and covering up parts of the floor. So I don't really see the need to go back to Capital at this point. And Capital's already allocated over time the 184 or whatever $1,000. So that would be my thinking.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, could I get a motion to approve the request for the reserve fund transfer?
I move to approve the request for the library's for reserve fund transfer.
Second.
All in favor? Bob Curley,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Evan,
Aye.
Andy. We'll get Andy next. Daveline,
Aye.
Brenda,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Al,
Aye.
Tina,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
I'm on
Caitlin?
Zoom meeting. Hold on.
Sarah,
Aye.
Andy, Mcelhaney, do you have a vote? Aye or nay? Okay.
Aye.
Okay, great. So it's approved. Good
Great.
luck. Hopefully they don't find anything hidden under there.
Fingers crossed. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it, and it will make a big difference to the library. So thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Tina. Goodbye. Okay, so next up on our agenda, we have our liaison reports, which I know we have a lot of them. We might actually have a couple extra ones that I don't have on the agenda, but we could give as a point of information, but we can't talk about it or discuss it. But let me start off first with George and the Sustainable Budget Task Force.
Thank you, Julie. So I'm not sure that I can add a whole lot to what you all just heard. I think the concept is very exciting. I think a number of people, including Evan, spoke to some of the issues that we have had previously in terms of the budget. So the idea of putting together a good group of people, and one thing that was not mentioned is that there's like a whole second tier of citizens who have agreed to support this task force in their efforts, and that includes people like Jim Taylor John Asher, who have been very helpful to the town over the years, including as former chairmen of the advisory committee. So there's a whole group of people who can help to get things done and to prepare reports and to do some analysis to help these folks out. As Julie mentioned, there are three liaisons to this task force, and we did have a discussion about whether the liaison should actually attend the meetings, and we decided, not only amongst ourselves, but also with Tom and Michelle's concurrence, that probably allowing the committee or the task force to do their work, without outside people such as AdCom liaisons sitting in, made a whole lot of sense, and that we would get periodic updates, and if need be, then we could certainly engage with the committee or with the task force to discuss certain or specific areas of concern. So it's an exciting thing. It's a short time frame, and there's a lot of work to be done, but it will help to guide our budget discussions, which we will begin sometime around the first of the year. Yeah.
Kristen, do you have a question for George?
Well, just with regards to the liaisons, again, I'm still a little confused on this committee. So if we're not part of the meetings, will we hear before it's public when the select board speaks about it monthly, like they just said? Will we hear about it first, or will we hear about it then? Or like, how are we getting information as liaisons on this?
I don't know that we said that we would meet with them, with the task force beforehand, but Julie and I have regular weekly conversations with Tom and Michelle, and we'll have the opportunity to get an update at that point. And I can certainly disseminate that information to you and Dave, for our consideration. And if there are questions that evolve from that, then we can go back to the task force from there.
Okay.
And of course, the way I see the liaison group is that once there's a recommendation or, whatever happens with the committee, then your group is moving forward to do any work on the AdCom side ahead of town meeting, but we don't know. Dave?
Yeah, part of you could tell from my questions about the public input, I'm a little bit, this is a lot of chicken and egg problem here. I mean, you've got a strategic plan process that's still going to be taking place by the school department. I don't know if I don't see how that gets completed. I mean, at best it gets completed concurrently with this effort. And at worst it gets completed after this effort, which to me begs the question, what are they plugging in there for school budget forecasts going forward? Now, obviously they have good representation from the school side. So I guess what I was kind of driving at with my public access questions, and I think Kristen was kind of getting at too in a different way, is, when is the rubber going to meet the road on these recommendations, and who is going to, ultimately end up taking the majority of input from the community on this? And something tells me it may be us in the context of the budget process, which may be appropriate, but it's just interesting. And so I do hope that there is a fair amount of public interaction and awareness through the selectmen presentations by this task force, because I guess I just have a little niggling thing in the back of my head that it feels like it doesn't feel as open a process to me from a general taxpayer perspective as I might have hoped. And maybe that's okay, because we've never been through this before and we all have to figure out a way, and we've got a short timeline. But I'm looking forward to hearing the first report to the select board, because I hope it's well attended, because I think people really need to be paying attention to this. I think this is going to be a big deal, and it's going to be a big deal come April.
Agreed. Thanks, Dave. Andy?
Yeah, I must say that I'm surprised and somewhat disappointed with the makeup of the task force, in that there is no active advisory committee member on the task force, unless there's a prohibition against our serving on a committee like that. It doesn't seem correct that we should not have some substantial input. And I note as well that of the 6 people, 3 are representatives of the schools. So that says something. Not just to make a complaint, but it does suggest to me that perhaps our liaisons may wish to attend some of the meetings and keep in very close touch and be able to report to us as to what's going on with the task force. The task force essentially stems out of the advisory committee suggestions to the annual town meeting, and it doesn't seem like we have, and at the end of the day, we're going to have to have a lot to say about balancing the budget, and yet we don't have much input on this task force.
Well, we did talk about it, George and I, in our weekly meetings over the summer. We talked about about the role of advisory committee in this process. And I think what the task force needs to do at the moment is figure out, well, what kind of town do we want to be and what kind of services do we want to offer? And given, that's one of the exercises they have to go through, and that's not for us to decide. It's for the select board and the school committee to decide what they're going to be offering. And anyway, I know that the task force is committed to having the advisory committee liaisons, getting their input throughout the process. And I don't know, George, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so Andy, I guess I would say I understand where you're coming from, and I would probably liken it to, well, a couple of things, like the water company and how AdCom reacted or participated in the purchase of the water system, but also that and the AdCom is an advisory committee. And this task force is charged with making recommendations for actions. So I think our main input is going to come in after the recommendations have been made, and trying to make some kind of an assessment and see if we agree with those, just as, with the water company, and go forward from there.
The only thing I would disagree with you, George, is, I mean, what we do is primarily is budgets, and to not be on a budget task force strikes me as just very different from whether the town should acquire the water company, if so, under what conditions. So I'm concerned that if our input comes in after the recommendations, then it's not real input. And you have so many, I mean, you have a new select board member on the committee, you have an interim superintendent on the committee. There are a lot of people who serve on the advisory committee who have a better handle on town finances, I think, and the problems that the town budgets have faced over the past few years. So I guess all I can say is I urge close contact through our liaisons.
I'd like to add that Gary Maestas, who is coming from the town of Plymouth, has substantial expertise in budgeting from his previous career as a superintendent. And that's what I've heard, that he is fantastic at that. So I think that having him on this task force, he's not brand new in terms of budgeting for schools and dealing with all that. Daveline?
Yeah, I just had two comments. One is just in reaction to this discussion. As I recall, when we were discussing making this recommendation back in the spring, we explicitly said someone from AdCom should not be on this because AdCom deals with current budget and the next year's budget. And this needed to be a group that could look over sort of in a long range planning idea. So I'm not surprised at all by that. And I think having Donna Smallwood on there is a representative of the advisory committee perspective. So I'm not worried about that. The other thing I was just going to say, though, is to support really what Dave was saying and also in the earlier meeting, because this is a task force and isn't subject to open meeting law. So they really, there needs to be some way in which the public thinks they're involved. And actually, I think more than that is involved in what the town should be. And so maybe that does come later as budgets come up or something, but that is a concern, just that there be some way in this process overall that there will be. And it's a little disturbing. I can see the issue of whether liaisons should attend in sort of in both ways. I mean, it's 3 liaisons and you got a 6-member committee. That's but it is important that the public have some ownership and buy-in and participation in this process.
And George and I this summer had a lot of back and forth with Tom Mayo and Michelle Monsegur about whether our liaisons would be actually attending the meetings or not. And so I can see both sides of it as well. But I think what we decided on is that for now, let them get started. They have a lot of open and honest discussion that they need to make among themselves at the beginning and as they sort themselves out. So I just, but if we come in and we start hearing the reports back to the select board and reporting back that we feel like we need to have our liaisons involved more, then I think Tom would listen, or Michelle Monsegur would listen to us. So we'll just have to wait and see. Evan?
Thanks, Julie. I wanted to actually, I agreed with almost everything that Andy said, and I know we went back and forth in the spring, and Daveline, thanks for reminding me. I guess I'm most struck by what will appear to be a lack of transparency around this, and it's a pretty, it's a pretty heavy issue for the town to put on a appointed group or a task force. So I think, and I'm okay, they need to do some work, they need to have discussions, but I do think there needs to be a more regular cadence than a monthly readout that Liz does to the select board around where this is going in a different way. Even the water company had, public meetings to take, residents of the town's input on that. And the other thing that Andy touched upon, which was one of the points I was going to make, is Dr. and you'll have to help me, Julie, Maestas. While he seems enormously competent and a bit of a breath of fresh air, he's also an interim superintendent. And we're talking about a strategic plan for a school system that needs a strategic plan, which was Paul's idea, not Gary's. So I think that's a little bit of it just concerns me that we're talking about making these decisions, and they're the right things to do, the right task force, the right conversations to have, where we're still kind of, in between where we were and where we're going from a school's kind of strategic plan standpoint.
Okay, thanks, Evan. Bob?
Yeah, going back to the spring and responding to what Andy said, I think first of all, our rules do prohibit AdCom members from serving on any other committee. We are an advisory body, and I see this kind of as a warrant article sort of process where the article is in the hands of the task force for formulation, and ultimately we are going to be asked to make a recommendation pro or con for that. I was very heartened by the statement indicating that the group was going into this with open minds and no preconceived conclusions. And I am disheartened, I think, for the reasons that Dave alluded to about the short time frame, that generally in our past, looking at school budget cycles, we're not getting hard numbers on the school budget until even March. And that's not a criticism of the school budgeting process, because so much of it is dependent on the state and federal funds and things that are uncontrollable. I think the last thing I'll say is that last year, when consideration was being given to whether there should be an override last year or whether it should be put off until a future year, and thank goodness we were able to do that, and thanks for all the great news tonight. But the thought was presented that if we are going to be in a situation where in March or so, there is going to be a request for an override, that people wanted to be in the strongest possible position to substantiate the need for what would be an extraordinary request in the town of Hingham. So, I mean, what it says to me is that the task force really is on a forced march up to January 22nd to accelerate a lot of things to a much earlier stage, to be able to get to the point where they can make the kind of recommendation that I think we would all, like to see from them. And I guess I'm happy to stand back and let them do their work. They've got a lot to do, and they've got some good people to do it. So I'll leave my comments off there.
Thanks, Bob. Dave?
Yeah, sorry, just one last point. I guess I don't want to conflate being a liaison with being a participant. I think CPC is a really good example where we spend a lot of time sitting quietly in the corner and we listen to Larry and his committee. And I've never heard in 5 years one of us say a word unless asked in those meetings. And we don't presume to tell CPC what to do. And yet when we come to AdCom, we come with a much better familiarity with the projects because of our observing that. So I guess Julie and George, what I would say to you guys as we look down the road, that is the model I think that might be suggested as just an observer role as a liaison, which is truly what it would be. And then we can also keep you all informed. And I think most importantly, kind of to Kristen's point, if like we said, there's a lot of moving parts. If we have a better idea of the process they take to get to a recommendation, we can be familiar with that process and not recreate that wheel in our own work after the fact. Or we may choose to do so, but at least we can say, they went through this process, they thought about this, they dispensed with this because of this reason, and we may say, well, we don't think they should have done so, and so forth. But you see where I'm going with it. I mean, I just think that Larry Lindner will be the first person to say that AdCom has never gotten in his way. And I would expect that Liz would say the same thing in this case. I mean, our role would be to listen, but I think it might save time.
Great points, Dave, and I agree with them. So I'll talk to in our meeting tomorrow. George and I can bring up all of your concerns. I know that they'll want to hear feedback, but comparing it to the role of the CPC liaison, I totally understand that. And I think that would be a nice, potentially a good compromise.
Could I raise my hand? I'm for the
Sure.
life of me, cannot find the raise hand button in the participants tab and feeling like an idiot, but I just wanted to make a quick point about Dr. Maestas, and you know, I don't know too much about his background. I have read a little bit about his time in Plymouth and his financial background, and it makes me really optimistic because I feel like we've learned some hard lessons about longevity. You know, I mean, it would be great to be starting this process with a permanent superintendent, but there's no guarantees that that person is here, you know, for the long term. So I am optimistic about his service on this board, given his background.
Great point. Thanks, Sarah. Anything else about the task force, Andy?
I just had one last question. Are we sure that this task force is not covered by open meeting law, Evelyn?
Yes, it's created by the town administrator's office. It's not created by town meeting. So it is a task force and it's not covered by the open meeting law.
Yeah, it's not a government group.
Do you want to add anything else, Andy? You all set? Okay.
No,
Oh.
I just wanted clarification on that.
Yep, good question.
Thank you.
Yep.
But I assume, I assume it'll keep minutes, and the minutes will be publicly available, even if it's not covered by open meeting.
I can ask.
That
I
would
don't
be up
think
to the
so.
task force. I mean, there's not a legal requirement because it's not an.
Okay,
Wow.
so moving on to our next liaison report, Dave, more education, ACEs.
Yeah, more education. Okay, quickly. So yes, for anybody who wasn't paying attention, Dr. Austin has resigned. Dr. Maestas is now in charge on an interim basis. The good news that I heard today is that Dr. Austin's departure was within the warranty window of the search committee for him. So we will get a new search for just expenses, which is part of the school committee's plan, which is a somewhat pleasant surprise, I think, from just a cost standpoint, if nothing else. So that's that process obviously will be taking place in the midst of all the other things that are going on. The other piece of good news, I think, from a student perspective is that, as I understand from talking to Carrie today, all of the new FTEs that were approved in the budget have been hired, with maybe one exception, which was not a student-facing position. It was one of the communications and analysis positions. But that I think has just been posted and hopefully gets filled shortly. So from an academic standpoint and a counseling standpoint and social and emotional standpoint, I think we have got all the positions filled, which is great. We also heard tonight, I think, if listening closely, that the strategic plan that had been planned is in fact going to continue this year, which is probably also a good thing, with the theory being that the school committee and the town ultimately decides where they want to go with this, and that delaying it for a year to have a new person might delay it more than a year, and they felt that this was the optimum time to do it. And I, at least putting my ACEs hat on, I think that makes a whole lot of sense. I don't see how you would, go through this budget process and then drop a strategic plan on the town 18 months down the road that might upset that apple cart. So let's hope that those things can get done at the same time and be complementary. Just quickly on the other school side, for folks looking at the org chart, there are 3 interim principals at the elementary level now at PRS, Foster, and East, for a variety of reasons that we can go into if you want, but it's not particularly important, other than I think the school committee is obviously very happy with the interim positions and will continue to work towards getting permanent positions taken care of. And then the last piece, particularly for folks who are new to the advisory committee, I would recommend this if you have the time and the inclination. On annually, the advisory committee education subcommittee, which has got the acronym ACES, meets with the school committee and school administration leadership on a Saturday morning, typically for a few hours, to talk a little bit about bigger picture items. And so this year's event will take place on October 2nd from 8 a.m. until about 11 a.m. thereabouts. Location is TBD, but when I spoke to Carrie today, we actually did think about potentially putting it in one of the, if anyone's been to Foster or to PRS, there are those covered outdoor basketball courts where you might have some better airflow, and for people who had a concern about being indoors but wanted to get in person, which I think all of us would choose to do, that may be, it's just a thought. So TBD on that, but for folks who are interested, please pencil in October 2nd, 8 to 11. All of advisory committee is welcome to attend and encouraged, as I said. It's really your one chance, I think, both to get a good orientation to the school issues, and this year maybe more than most. There's a lot on the plate, so it tends to be a very good meeting and a nice time to also, hopefully, if we can do it in person, to get to meet some of the school leadership and the school committee leadership as well. I think that's it.
Thanks, Dave. And I will add that I did learn about the strategic planning process. Like, as you mentioned, Dave, it was on, and then when Dr. Austin resigned, they were considering not doing the strategic planning process until they had hired a permanent superintendent. And then they did just announce, or, as the beginning of this task force, they said, yes, we're going to do it. We are going to do it. And they are going to hire a facilitator to help them with this process, and that they would want to be done by July 1st. So it's concurrent with, it'll be interesting what they can come up with ahead of our budget planning process. And that they said that their goal is to find what's best for the town as a whole. So Tom Mayo is very excited to hear their stating that kind of goal. So great.
And for what it's worth, just as a quick footnote to that, I did, in speaking to Carrie again today, every chance I get, seeing her on the street or at the fruit center or on the phone, I just remind her that, and it's going to come out in spades in this budget conversation, that the growth of expenses vis-a-vis the growth of revenues is ultimately this mismatch. And and I think we all made that point, for those who were on the committee last year, to the school committee in the context of our own budget conversations. And I think the strategic plan needs to take a long, hard look on, how they bend that cost curve, as we said last year, to try to get it to something that's sustainable. So obviously a lot more conversation to have about that, but I think that's an understood topic from the school committee perspective, at least from the chair's perspective. So hopefully it'll continue to get a lot of good thought put towards it.
Okay. Thanks, Dave.
Julie, I can't figure out how to raise my hand. So just make sure I understand this correctly. So the report, was that saying that we won't hear about the finalized reports of July, but we potentially could be voting on Prop 2.5 in April town meeting? Am I hearing that correctly?
Well, yeah, I mean, the school department has a strategic planning process that they're going to undertake now, that they expect to finish in July. But obviously, concurrent with that, the task force is working on whatever recommendation, and they also have to come up with a budget. We can't wait until July for them to come up with a budget for fiscal year 23. So they have, they're going to be running the strategic plan concurrently, but they will have to come up with a budget before then.
But they, like, I guess what I'm trying to understand is, and you guys let me know if this is stuff I should be doing offline with somebody, but when they put forward, if you do have to do something with Prop 2.5, like, would it refer to the long-term kind of needs of the school, but we wouldn't actually be able to refer to that in terms of, maybe I'm misunderstanding how things connect?
Well, we don't know if they're going to ask yet, if the task force is going to ask yet for a Prop 2.5 override.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, so I guess I can't answer that question for you right now. Okay, we don't have a harbor development report at this time. CPC, Nancy, do you have anything to report on what's going on?
I do, to the preliminary applications, came in today. There was a group of them that came yesterday. And then there was a flurry that came in this afternoon. So unfortunately, I don't have a total number for you because I haven't had time to go through those. They came in right before our meeting started. So it appears that there is probably in the neighborhood of about 20 applications that have been submitted. And I would say probably half of them are for affordable housing. And then there is a couple from recreation, a couple historic things, and then surprise, surprise, the pool's back. So anyway, it looks like there's a lot of activity right now. They're just getting started, and those will be reviewed over the next, I believe it's this, I think they only have 2 or 3 weeks to determine whether or not they're actually meet the requirements of CPC. And then they'll start the actual presentation process to the committee.
When you say half the applications are for affordable housing, so there are applications for specific projects outside.
Yes, so, and I don't know, it's a good question, and it's something that I actually want to follow up with the committee on is, I think this might be related, Julie, to, if you remember last year, the committee had asked that everything kind of be its own P&L and that there would be a report on specific projects.
Mm-hmm.
And so it may be that they have now differentiated how they're actually requesting the money so that they can better support that process going forward. And it may just have been a difference in how they're choosing to approach the committee than how they have in the past. I think that that's been an evolving process of how affordable housing has been interacting with CPC over the past couple of years has changed. And I see Daveline has her hand up. She probably has a point of view.
Probably have more information.
I was just going to say, no, I know this actually from a totally different source. The Housing Authority put in several specific requests. This isn't, I mean, Affordable Housing Trust will have requests, but the actual Hingham Housing Authority had, I think, in the neighborhood of 6 or 7 specific projects they were seeking funding for. So.
Okay,
I
this is
flipped
probably
through
related
those.
to.
I flipped through those, Nancy. They all appear to be like small, smallish.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to, some of them look like, you're right, that they're trying to do some repair and rehab kind of stuff. It's not the huge bucket like the request was last year that I have seen yet, but I haven't had time to analyze them.
Okay.
Last year, all those.
Say
They're 2 different things. Hingham Housing Authority
yes,
will be asking for something. The Hingham Affordable Housing Trust will be asking for the opportunity funding.
Right.
Okay, remember last year, the Housing Authority did have some projects that they lost out on a technicality. It was like a date issue that they had with their application. So I guess they're coming back. So,
yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Nancy, while we have you, do you have anything on the public safety facility?
The public safety facility is getting close to having a final interior design being done. They just met on the 2nd last week, a fairly significant meeting. They met, the architect KBA made a presentation specifically about net zero, LEED certification, et cetera, and what was being done for that. There was a heavy presentation or presence in the room of both the Cleaner Greener as well as Hingham Power and Light. So there was a lot of very good discourse back and forth with the committee on that, with the architects answering a lot of questions. So now they go back and they are going to do the, final cross their T's and dot their I's on the design. Again, right now they're still very much focused on the interior. So they haven't even really gotten to the exterior of what the building is going to look like. But they are finishing their, they've been meeting and with the chiefs and making sure that the chiefs have everything that they need in the buildings. Next, they'll go on the LEED certification and then, and the net zero, all that. And what they need to do is come up, there's basically, they have to come up with a baseline cost and, you know, what the building would cost if we just did it this way. And then every kind of flavor, every variation that they have on top of that will be costed so that the town can make a decision as to what makes sense in terms of what we're trying to accomplish with the net zero vis-a-vis what the ultimate cost of those options are going to be. It looks like we have some very good options. And it also looks like some of the probably more expensive options are probably going to be, my sense was, and there were no votes or anything taken, but my sense is maybe discounted simply because of, for instance, the closeness to the water might negate the wanting to do a geothermal thing as opposed to doing more solar and offsets through Hingham Power and Light. So it was a good meeting. It was very, very well received, and I think that they've got good momentum. So
good. All right, thank you. Oh, Brenda, you have
Brenda had a
something?
question.
Just wanted to ask, I know one of the Hingham Net Zero folks had been asking whether the committee was going to ask the architect to include basically what the cost is on the long run of maintaining the building, whether the system is electric, whether the system is fossil fuel, because you're really sort of that's the only way to compare apples to apples in terms of what the ultimate cost would be for these buildings. So do you know if the committee decided to ask for that information?
They did, and there was conversation back and forth on, you know, how close you can get with those numbers. And even like, you know, Laura even conceded that the price of electricity and how you factor all that in is going to change, because the more we do, the cheaper it gets. How do you factor in all of that? But there are in their cost estimates will be the cost of actually implementing, and then what they would assume a payback period would be for each of the various options that we would have.
And it's not just payback, it's also what is the ongoing costs of keeping running, right? So it's not just the payback, but yeah. Okay.
So there is a long-term view in the costing.
And are they asking for, asking for costs of what it would cost to retrofit the building if it wasn't close to net zero at the beginning, what it would cost?
There was a conversation initiated obviously by the comments from the audience about retrofitting. But I don't believe that I don't think there were any promises made that was going to be costed in. KBA has two very recent experiences of doing LEED certified, I think, at the gold level, so above the silver, but not the platinum. One being, interestingly enough, both of them being right on the water. One was Beverly and the other one was Quincy. The one in Quincy is hard to relate to ours because it's ginormous. It's like 5 times the size of what Hingham is doing. Beverly is more of a direct consult. So they have there's a lot of analysis that's already been done for those two buildings, and that'll be incorporated in. So,
thanks.
All right, thanks, Nancy. So Brenda, speaking of net zero, do you have an update, or you had a little bit of an update on their committee, but what I'm curious is that has the committee name now called the Climate Action Planning Committee?
That's the name that our warrant article requested the formation of a committee to be.
Yes, right.
Climate
Okay.
Action Planning.
I know, in my
Committee.
head, sorry. So in my head, I was like, oh, just net zero, but that's not right. So
But the goal
Thank
of
you.
the Climate Action Plan is to help the town get to.
Right, of course.
zero.
Okay.
Right.
So I gotta update my documents. Okay.
Right
So,
here.
so go ahead.
For the town, having decided the town meeting to create this committee, the fact that the committee has been constituted as of now is, relatively fast speed for this town. So I'm told by Brad Moyer, who's the chair, that the composition has been set. Their first meeting is scheduled for next week. He has written up a sort of proposed charter that obviously, since the committee hasn't met, they haven't voted on. But the proposed plan is that the committee will spend this coming year until the fall of 2022 to develop a proposed climate action plan for the town. Which would then lead to a very public process preparing for articles for the warrant of 2023 to address the things that need to be done through town meeting to enact a plan. So that's their goal, is to create a plan by next fall, then go through the process of figuring out which pieces need to go through town meeting for 2023.
And is there still an energy action committee, and is Brad still chair of that as well?
There is an energy action committee. Brad is the representative from that committee to climate action planning. The chair of energy action is Michael Reeve.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Andy, did you have any update on the planning board or just tree preservation?
I have the only planning board update I have is regarding the master plan committee.
Yep.
And the planning board approved the master plan with some minor technical changes or clarifications or corrections, but not substantive changes. And as approved, the plan is now back with the consultants for reformatting, graphics, and production. Hard copies with supporting materials will be available in mid-October. The chair of the master plan committee, who is also on the planning board, Gordon Carr, is contemplating a subcommittee of master plan committee to develop an approach and perhaps a warrant article to establish a formal implementation committee, master plan implementation committee. So we may be seeing a warrant article on that. I have not heard anything else about warrant articles out of the planning board quite yet, with the possible exception of the tree preservation study committee. They met with the planning board for a second time in late July, and then they had a meeting among themselves on August 3rd that Brenda and I attended. And at the latter meeting, Priya pretty much went over what had gone on before the planning board. To recap it, in all likelihood, the tree preservation study committee will submit a proposed warrant article that would amend the zoning bylaw to include a tree preservation portion that will look a lot like what the town of Wellesley has, which is similar to, but a little more expansive than what has been talked about to date. And one of the issues to be resolved is whether anytime there is a site plan review called for under the planning board's bylaw, whether that would also trigger a action under the tree preservation amendment to the bylaws. We saw, interestingly enough, on the night that Priya presented the addition, the revised plan to the planning board, one of the earlier items was a site plan review that had involved a major discussion regarding the removal of trees. And there had not been documentation of what the land looked like prior to the site plan review having been submitted, although there were aerial photographs that seemed to indicate that quite a few trees had been taken down. As part of the site plan review, the planning board had stipulated that there a certain amount of tree plantings would be added, and that certain trees that were on site would stay there, but it tended to really emphasize the need for the tree preservation amendment, if you will. So I expect that we'll see, I expect we'll see something further from the Tree Preservation Study Committee in the near future, and that the planning board will be supportive of it. The good news was that the cost of doing a tree survey, if you will, if you're subject to the proposed bylaw, would you bring in a certified arborist? Probably would, the average cost in Wellesley is something like $1,500. So it's not a huge undertaking for a citizen of the town. Of course, anytime you restrict what citizens can do on their own land, it gets a little sticky. But given the need for more trees to help in the climate action plan efforts, if you will, I think people will see the need for it. My final note is that, if I understood correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brenda, that Priya Howell, as chair of this committee, has reached out to all of the players in the town that we had suggested, or other people had suggested that she might talk to get input, and I don't think anybody responded to her. Is that what you understood, Brenda?
Yeah, she had not gotten the response that she was hoping for. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Meaning town employees or other committees?
Well, some other committees, like the Shade Tree Committee and the tree warden, who is you know, the head of the DPW, and there was one or two other committees that may operate more in name only. But there's been a disappointing lack of response, I think it's fair to say. So in any event, that's so the next thing we expect is to see another version of a proposed amendment to the zoning bylaw to be presented to the planning board sometime early fall.
All right. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah.
So Brenda, I missed putting the light board on the agenda, but if you have a point of information that you want to give about the substation, we just can't discuss and ask questions, but if you want to.
The piece of land within the transfer station property that was identified as a potential place for the third substation to be placed. The review of it looks like it's going smoothly. At this point, the light plant is going out talking to Weymouth about routes that the line would actually use to come into Hingham. And their plan at this point is to start public meetings in October. As soon as I have those dates, I'll let people know if you'd like to listen in. But they are planning a process of getting input from local folks about their reaction to this particular site. They do have a rendering of what they think the building will look like. And the spot, just for people to be aware of, is literally where is currently now woods within the transfer station property. So if you know where the bulky waste area is, it's between that and the end of the transfer station property, but it's currently all wooded. So it will not impede transfer station operations in any way.
Okay. Thank you. Nancy, we can't ask questions about it right now though, because I didn't have it on the agenda, so next time. Any other informational bits that any liaisons wanted to give out tonight? Seeing none, we're going to head into the next agenda item, which is housekeeping. Nancy has reached out to advisory committee members about the getting the signatures and also doing those who need to do ethics training. Nancy, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, just particularly for the new people, and some of our most esteemed members who've been around for a while. The conflict of interest is literally, you just print off a form and say you received the material. So it's not a heavy lift. So that's the one that everybody has to do this year. The ethics, if you can just either send me the form from last year, if you did it last year, just so that I have the dates of when everybody did it, or the form if you did it. And that is an online training and expected to take, if you haven't done it yet, for the new folks, it does take about an hour, as I recall. Thank you.
It's really fun.
Oh, wait, Nancy, we all owe you something?
Yes, you owe me, actually, Evan, you owe me two things. So that I sent out the PDF of the form that you need to print. So you just print off the last page, sign it, take a picture of it and send it back to me. And then if you didn't do the online training last year, then you need to do it this year. Every town volunteer and employee has to do it every 2 years.
That's your gift with purchase for being a volunteer.
It is. It's just one of those little bonuses that you get.
Just to remind you that you can't take fancy dinners from the town.
Yeah,
All those dinners that you've been offered, you have to turn down.
that's right.
Share your fruit basket with all of AdCom.
Okay, so everybody just check your email and get Nancy what she needs.
So
Next.
can I ask a question? Like, when do you need this finance? Like next meeting?
I think I want to say that in the handbook, it's like within 30, it's 60 days or something from the start of us meeting. So just do it this month.
That's right. But you remember that rules without enforcement are suggestions.
All right, then I'll just show up at your house.
We also have open meeting law training classes that are offered by Town Council John Coughlin. They are going to be held online instead of in person. One of them is on Thursday, September 23rd at 3:00 p.m. The other one's on Wednesday, September 29th at 7:00 p.m. If anyone wants me to resend the information, just let me know if you want, because then Sharon Perfetti will send you out the Zoom link. Maybe you already got all of them, but anyway, those are two chances to learn about the open meeting law, and I think it's very helpful, the training. For the calendar, I sent out my best first stab at a calendar for the year. It's assuming that the year will be normal, and let's hope and keep hoping that it will be sort of a normal setup. You'll see that I started off December saying, oh yeah, we'll start with general government and the usual budgets. And then I took a stab at a couple other ones. But after that, it's just, I don't know. We will just have to see how things unfold with the budgets. But the idea is that we would meet 2 times in December and then go back to our meeting 4 times in January, and so on and so forth. And of note, like Dave said, coming up on October 2nd, it's a Saturday at 8 a.m., there is a meeting with the school committee and the school department. The select board is also invited to talk about, as Dave said, big picture items, and you can see people. And what else? And our next advisory committee meeting will be on Tuesday, October 12th. So that is the next item, is that we have 2 documents which we need to edit this year. One is the annual policies and procedures update, And I know that we hacked it to death this spring, so we don't really need to.
Butchered was the word I'd use. Yep.
I don't need to change
as
the
well.
document that much. And I'm gonna spare Daveline this assignment for this time, but that really don't need that many edits need to be done, but it's just an annual exercise. And Tina has graciously accepted my request to take a review at it, and then no pressure, Kristen, but I sent you a quick email to see if you wanted to jump on that bandwagon. But we can talk offline about it afterwards. But the idea is that we could just kind of take a pass at it and then bring it back to our next meeting that we can either talk about and then adopt or put off until November. But it's just a couple things, like the Board of Selectmen needs to be changed to Select Board, a couple things like that.
It's never just a couple things, Julie.
But the other big thing, it's a big thing, is that Bob is embarking on, or has already begun with his team, a review, an update of the financial policy. And that's what the advisory committee has to do once every 3 years. And this is our turn. So Bob, you want to take it from here?
Sure. So George, Caitlin, and I have all done our own individual reviews of the financial policy. And last night we met for almost 2.5 hours to go through various questions and comments, which has resulted in a red line that was circulated to you this afternoon. And after consultation with Julie, we thought that the process that we would follow from here on in would be to solicit the comments of AdCom members, and to the extent that people feel ready tonight, happy to hear them, or if it makes more sense to people, you could send an email just to George, Caitlin, and myself with any comments, revisions, or suggestions that you have on the red line. I ask that you do that within a week, and then George, Caitlin, and I will review those and revise the present red line as necessary. We then intend to solicit input from both the school committee and the select board with respect to the next iteration of this, this red line. And then after we have that input, to come back to all of you with a proposed final draft of a financial policy. So that's the process we anticipate, and we hope to be in a position to have a final of the financial policy ready for approval by late October or early November. And perhaps it makes sense for me to just highlight some of the changes that we've made. Some of the changes were just wordsmithing, but I think last year's experience with COVID alerted probably all of us to some holes in the financial policy. So one of the things we wanted to do was to at least put some language in the financial policy about dealing with pandemics or climate disasters or that sort of things, and to provide at least a general guidance and authorization for the town as to how to go forward in that regard. Total annual expenditures has been a key term in the past, especially with respect to the percentages of unassigned fund balance that are available for use for various purposes. And of course, last year we had the major addition of the Weir River water system, which if included in total annual expenditures, would add $13 million or so. And when you take 20% of that, it makes a significant difference in terms of the 20% of unassigned fund balance that can be used for various additional purposes. So we think it makes most sense for total annual expenditures, TAE, not to include sewer, the South Shore Country Club budget, or the Weir River water system. They are all really separate enterprises, and we don't think that number or the operating budget number should include that at all. You'll see in item 3 the addition of a cautionary statement about forecasting. Some of this was referenced earlier tonight at the select board meeting. And for our new members, and to refresh the memories of our experienced members, the forecast is typically a revenue forecast, and expenditures are forecast very conservatively to rise at 2%, which I think many of us have realized is not particularly realistic, but not necessarily something that is easy to deal with. And last year, 2 financial models were developed by Jim Taylor and John Asher that are on the select board's website that provide anyone who so desires to basically manipulate the numbers with different rates of growth. And so we thought that we would refer to those tools as a way to give people an additional way to deal with the forecast. We included some language about emergency circumstances, which generally tracked the type of response that the town had for COVID last year. Right now, whether they'll stay in or out, we made reference to implementing the report of the Sustainable Budget Task Force as appropriate. We made reference to a periodic review of revenue generation in the town and comparison with best practices in similarly situated towns, which is something that I think collectively we have all talked about in the past. And there is a paragraph that very generically refers to the concept of an override, which really was not previously mentioned in any depth in the financial policy. We thought under capital that the definition of a capital asset should go up from $10,000 to $15,000 with some leeway for the town administrator or the school committee to have a lower number of 10,000. We thought that would facilitate the work of capital outlay and give more discretion to department heads. We added a paragraph that reflects the town's commitment to zero carbon emissions. And whether that should stay in or not, we are looking for comments from all of you. And I think those are the highlights. I know it's getting late. So happy to receive comments now if people feel like they've had an adequate chance to think about them, or happy to get the comments by email in the next week. And George or Caitlin, do you want to add anything?
Bob, and maybe Julie, because I haven't looked at them, but I know, Julie, you sent out this financial policy. And I just wanted to double check to make sure that the one you sent out is the red line version that Bob is referring to with the additional documentation or the additional suggestions.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the one
Okay,
that I
great.
did today, George, after our meeting last night.
Right, good. All right, perfect.
So we spared you the earlier red line and all of the brightly colored comments in the margins about how about this and how about that. So
Thank you. Thanks for your group for your efforts. And I have a question from Andy.
Could I just suggest that that the drafts be numbered going forward, so that it'd be easier for me to make sure that I'm working with the most current draft?
sure, happy to do that.
Thank you.
Matt?
So during the training, Tom Mayo was talking about Hingham's distinction as having the triple, the AAA rating from the 3 credit rating agencies. And the 6th bullet down talks about the financial policy preserving the town's credit rating. Is that something this committee's debated in the past and fully aligned on? It seems like, given where interest rates are and low levels of debt service, that it might be something that's worth revisiting. But I didn't know if that was something that this group has already debated at length in past sessions.
If I can respond to that, Julie?
Yeah.
I think the committee and almost anyone dealing with town finances in the past has been 1,000% supportive of doing whatever we can to maintain the AAA bond ratings. I mean, for example, last year, Matt, we borrowed money on bond anticipation notes at, was it 0.75%, Sue? It's pretty amazing what that AAA bond rating will do for us. And I think some of the choices that the 3 of us made in proposing these changes to the financial policy were specifically having in mind the AAA bond rating and wanting to maintain it. I have not heard anyone articulate a reason as to why we would not want to have.
I think the issue I see is that for capital projects for the town, the difference between a AAA rated bond and a AA rated bond is 0.1% or 0.15%. So for every $10 million in debt we're taking on, the debt service, the interest rate payments we'd be making to that, it's only $15,000 differential each year for every $10 million of bonds we'd be issuing. And it just seems to me like short money in an environment where rates are so low and have been so low for so long, that you could argue the AAA rating is a point of pride, but it doesn't make financial sense for the town, and that we're foregoing other investments we could be making if we were willing to kind of take on more debt for some of those other projects. And so I recognize I might be in the minority in this point of view, but I think it's worth exploring given the really unique environment we're in, where that can actually be a good thing.
There has been another historical consideration to the AAA bond rating, which is that the other towns have experienced in the past not having access to capital markets, depending on economic circumstances, where they did not have a AAA bond rating. So I think that's kind of the second prong of what Hingham has valued with the AAA bond rating. It is that access to capital markets. Our paper is highly desirable. But we haven't had that debate. Happy to read anything that you might want to send on to us, or consider what it is that might make a difference in the change.
Great. Thanks for the consideration.
Evan, you want to jump in?
I was just going to say, I was going to jump in. Amen, Matt. I love the point, because I've heard from day one that I started on this board that, all hail the AAA bond rating. But nobody finishes a sentence at what cost. So, I'm happy to be educated on why we could, look at a AA bond rating and still be able to do some of the things we want to do. So great point.
Sarah?
Yeah, I echo Matt's thoughts as well. And I think it comes from, a whole year of spending just hours and hours listening to the school committee, and really hearing a lot of public comment about the same issue. And I think, people are really starting to take a harder look at the kinds of projects that we really need to be doing around town. So again, I completely understand the history, and I would love to hear more about all aspects of it, the pros and cons, sort of once again, as like a refresh on that topic.
Well, it would also be interesting to send that information over to the select board, because I'd like to hear what their thoughts would be on that as well.
Great. So Julie, maybe I can have that as a takeaway and send around materials to the group if I can dig them up.
Yep. That's great.
That would be most welcome. And that's why we do this every 3 years. Did Andy have a question?
Yeah, Andy or Evan, I see your hands are
No,
still raised.
I'll put mine down. I'm done. It's late.
Andy, you all set?
Wait a minute.
I think he is. Okay.
I just want to know that Sue is not smiling and has not smiled in several minutes. So,
Well, Snickers needs to go out soon. So we've been, this has been a long meeting. For the new members, it's her dog.
He's waiting for the goodbyes. He'll be out.
So we're looking for your comments too.
I know. I was going to say, what does Sue think about this? How?
Well, the one thing I was going to ask Matt is what does everybody think the difference between going to a AA? We have a debt capacity that we will never reach, and we can take on that debt and still keep AAA. I'm just not sure what everybody's thinking going down to AA would do for the town.
Yeah, I think that's the part of the equation I don't fully understand, Sue, is it seems like we have capital, like access to capital, access to debt. It just, as an outsider, I never understand why some of these projects aren't funded over long periods of time. And I think it's just more understanding the financing structure than it is the actual capital markets aspect of it. I think you and I are on the same page. Like, you got plenty of access to money, right? That's not the problem. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
It's just more, how do you actually fund things through warrant articles or get consensus in the town? And it's not actually about the capital markets.
Ah, okay.
That was a question more than a comment. Is that kind of what I'm learning here?
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people are thinking, is what's the difference between capital outlay and the process of going through an article. Because we can take on debt. We have a limit that we will, quite honestly, we could do every project that we ever have to do all in one swoop. It's just right now, nothing's ready. You couldn't have all those projects ready for debt. We can take on the debt and still keep our AAA.
Isn't the question how we end up paying for the additional debt?
Yeah,
Well,
it's the
that-
taxes.
Yes,
Right.
that's the other side.
So did I
But
hear
that-
override?
But that will
No.
have nothing to do with our AAA.
I'm hearing
I
debt,
understand.
I'm hearing debt exclusion. That's, you know.
I'm gonna go
like
get a
that's
drink.
increasing-
Hang on here. I'm gonna get a drink. I'm gonna.
Dave,
Some
Dave,
popcorn.
we've been speaking out of turn. I'm sorry. You're next.
Oh, no, you're entitled. Don't let me stop you. Well, no, I think the question that Matt raises is an interesting one, and one that we haven't had, at least as a group, in my 6 years on the committee. I think it'd be worthwhile having. I think, Sue, maybe I misunderstood your point, but I guess the question I have, which I don't think I could answer if somebody stopped me on the street, is kind of what are the boundaries to the AAA, and do we approach them, and do we avoid them at all costs at some other cost, which is kind of Evan and Matt's point. So, you know, I imagine capital market advisors, I don't know who this would be, but someone I'm sure could give us some guidance about where those parameters are and what the agencies are looking at, and where we, you know, kind of a matrix about how close we're coming to the edge on one or the other, and not on others. And I think it would be a valuable exercise just as a foundational thing for us all to understand, because I do think I think it has been gospel. And that's not to say we shouldn't ask about its genesis at some level, which I think is where Matt's coming from. I don't want to speak for him, but.
Thanks, Dave. Andy, you have anything to add? No.
I do not. I'm sorry. I didn't
Okay.
take my hand down.
Okay, so we have, I'll agree then that we will send Bob within a week, any changes to the document, any suggested changes, and that Matt will try to come up with some information for us so we can expand on a discussion and about the AAA bond rating. Anything else? Thanks, Bob and George.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, any matters not anticipated within 48 hours of meeting? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to
adjourn.
I was raising my hand actually to try.
Sorry.
Just, that's okay. It's just a very quick thing. We have tentatively scheduled for the Affordable Housing Trust to make their presentation at our next meeting.
Yes.
And I am hopeful that I will be able to send to you the housing production plan, which is a document of about 100 or so pages. And so I'm hoping to get that to you within the next couple of weeks. So just be on the lookout for it, because if you get a chance to at least skim it before their presentation, it would be helpful, I think, to everyone.
Definitely. Is there any chance that you could send that to the town and have them print and mail copies? I mean, I don't want to print out 100 pages on my printer at home, nor do I want to read 100 pages online.
I don't know. I can look into seeing if people need a hard copy, maybe that's the way to do it. Because I thus far have always been reading it online. So people can let me know in that. I'm not sure if it's ready to, well, I don't know. I will look into it.
Thank you.
Look at that.
Appreciate that. The new people all know that Sue Nickerson is the town accountant, right? And that vicious animal in the picture will attack you if you do something Sue doesn't like.
Vickers is ready for bed. Yeah, so our next meeting, we're going to have the Affordable Housing Trust give its about annual update on what they're up to. So that's something to look forward to. Okay, so we had a motion to adjourn and it was seconded. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, Bob,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
where's Nancy? Aye. Yes. Nancy,
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you say my name. Yeah. Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Evan,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Dave, Lean,
Aye.
Brenda,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Al,
Aye.
Tina,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Caitlin,
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.